What's up, pod pals? You are listening to Let's Talk About Your Podcast. For those joining us live on Facebook or YouTube, how's it going? Thanks for checking out the live stream. I'm very excited. We are doing our Let's Talk About Your Podcast launch series. So I've put a request out for people that are a little pod curious. They've even been podcrastinating a bit. They've got a great show idea. They know that they can make an impact, but they're just having a hard time getting over that hump of actually starting and launching their show. So today, I've got Brady Patterson on the show with me. He's thinking about launching a show in the outdoor adventure space. You can check him out at outdooradventureschool.com. If you're watching on the video, that is on the bottom of the screen there. Brady, welcome to the show, man.
I'm super glad to be here.
Okay. So I had you fill out a ton of information for me. I appreciate you doing that. I know it can be a little tedious, but I really want this to be of high value to you because once I dug into your info, I see it. Like I see the vision. I see the person you're trying to impact. I see the why behind that whole experience, why you're going to put effort into doing this show. So now we just need to kind of get your sea legs a little bit and go, all right, here's how we could actually pull this off. And it's probably not as intimidating or as bad as you think. So you ready to dive into this, man?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So first off, describe the space that you're in right now, because I feel like the premise behind your show, at first glance, I'm like, oh, it's going to be about, being out in the wilderness and doing everything. But really, you want to serve the business people that are out there teaching people that. So describe kind of the premise of your brand and who you're looking to serve.
Sure. So with the Outdoor Adventure School, the whole intent behind it was to help outdoor professionals build their business. So one of the things that I've noticed over the past 2 years, as I've been in the marketing world, is that there's an incredible, and in the outdoor world at the same time, there's an amazing amount of people out there that are brilliant at what they do. But when it comes to marketing, they are completely lost. They're like, I've got this website, and they think that that's going to fill their classes. Or they're like, I'm going to build a massive social media following, and then they're struggling to get past like 1,000 or 2,000. Or they're already sponsored. And I recently just finished a contract with Fjallraven, the outdoor clothing company. I was sponsored as well, but those things didn't lead to money. And I was trying to figure out, well, how do I make this a business for myself? And I realized that if I'm experiencing that, other professionals are experiencing that as well. And so I started putting this together and trying to figure out, how do I bring more marketing knowledge and simplification to this process so that people that love the outdoors and just want to play in the woods and get dirty rather than spend time behind these computer things can continue to do that. And so that's where this idea came from.
All right. So I love it. I love that it's what I call a double niche. So it's a niche within a niche. So it's within the outdoor adventure niche, but it's you wanting to help professionals within that niche to get more exposure. So I'm going to blast some ideas at you. A whole bunch of stuff just whacked right into my brain piece here. And I've got notes as well. But I think that this is a really great concept, first and foremost. There's a lot of different ways you can deliver on this. But what I would have you envision is you being a hub of information in this space that you can run other people's brands through, and you shine the spotlight, just like you said. So you've got there's somebody that's up and coming, that's a great instructor. They got a great course. They have a great, event or live experience. They're taking people out in the woods, and the people are like, this is amazing, but they have no media background. They have no media skills, but you've got the hub. All right. And you can bring them on, shine a spotlight, blow them up. And now they're able to monetize more effectively, and their dream lives on. To where, like, when you fill out your information, you mentioned somebody that just was excellent, one of the most skilled people you've ever seen, but never really was able to make any money in it because they just didn't know how to get people in front of it. So you can be the outdoor adventure Death Star, that you can have this like positivity laser beam that you shoot on people's brands, and we can blow it up. Now, on the other side of that, we have to take care of you as well and go, okay, how does this pay for itself at least? Or how do we get sponsors and things like that? This is where you're bringing influencers on the space to deliver great content, brands, clothing brands, gear brands, events, people that have outdoor services, workshops, anything outdoor related. They can sponsor your show. They can come on as experts. like I'm doing this a little bit with my low carb brand as well. Like if you put out a monthly newsletter or a weekly newsletter or your Instagram feed, you can start featuring other people's content in that, and you just shine the spotlight. They're creating it. And maybe you have somebody that's like the Pacific Northwest expert and the Southeast expert and the Africa expert or whatever, and like adventures in different spaces, and they're putting out content for you, and then you are the hub. So I think that's the mindset I would approach this with, because it allows for a lot of really exciting content. Experts come on and teach you, in return are helping them with their brand, but then you getting some sort of a membership mastermind, business school type of an event going where people can pay you to kind of be like, all right, now I want to be a bigger part of this hub, or I want to learn from Brady on how to blow this up. So like you've got like the outdoor adventure expert school, basically, like they're coming to you. It's like business 101 for the outdoor expert. How's any of that hitting you? Are we feeling good about it?
Yeah, that sounds great. And actually I have the outdoor business mastermind, and, so I'm already doing those things, those pieces, and trying to shine a light. And the whole thing around it is like, well, I don't have this particular medium under control, right? I don't have a podcast yet. I haven't launched it. So yeah, this is landing 100%.
Okay. So, and with that mastermind, I'm glad you brought that up. Like you can use the show to drive into that. So let's say you have a great expert on, you talk business a little bit. Obviously, like they need to provide tips in the space, because you want people that are interested in outdoor adventure listening in as well, because that's going to drive up your download numbers. So you have to kind of split the content a little bit. Like we teach about outdoor adventure, but then we also talk some business, and you provide some ideas and tips to help them connect with their brand a little bit better. So it's kind of like a 50-50 conversation, because you don't want to limit it down too much, especially when we're looking at sponsors and bringing those in, because we want to kind of serve both. And I think that'll be fairly easy, because people in the space are going to love talking about tips and tactics and what they've got going on anyway. Like that's what we do. That's what we nerd out on. So, but at the end of that conversation, it's easy to make an offer to that guest and go, hey, I've got this next workshop going on. I would love to have you be a part of it as a speaker, or it costs XYZ dollars. Here's a discount or whatever. And we're bringing them in. It's called a guest as client strategy, where you're interviewing people, but you also happen to be connecting with people that could be ideal clients for you. And it's not like bait and switch strategy. It's just like you use your podcast to connect to people that would potentially be amazing clients for you. So like, let's just get real and talk about what we're doing right here. Like you are somebody I connected with on Clubhouse, right? We connected, I think, on Clubhouse. Yeah. Then Instagram, you reached out. You're like, I'm procrastinating. Help me, bro. I'm like, come on the show. Let's produce some great content together and let's see what happens. And like, it's not like when we hit the off button, I'm like, all right, Brady, time to pay up. Like that's not going to happen. It's like, I'm going to deliver the hell out of it and really produce for you in this, and work together, going to produce great content that's going to create a lot of aha moments for all my pod pals out there, people that are thinking about launching a show. And then afterwards, you're like, hey, I think I actually do want to do this, and I do want some help. Cool. Hopefully I'm top of mind. Like that's the approach that you take with these people. So I think you can produce some killer content. And then when you do your workshop, you've got a captive audience. I would be recording almost every minute of that, taking snippets out, putting it up as your show. Like, I mean, that's just gold, and you're already doing it. That's the beautiful thing. It's like, you're going to spend time doing that anyway. Might as well record it and use it as content for the show, or like doing testimonials, things like that. It's going to be outstanding. So I think that's making a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about your roadblocks for like, why exactly have you not started this show yet? Like, it seems like a great idea. Why haven't we started it yet?
Part of it, I think, is because the outdoor business has been more of a passion project. I mean, I've been teaching outdoor skills for almost a decade, but this whole, my main skill set has always been in affiliate management, affiliate marketing, focusing really heavily on supporting other experts in the kind of coaching, consulting, service professional space. And so what I'd seen there was that most of my clients are always kind of like, if I'm honest about this, most of them are kind of like, well, podcasting is kind of like, it doesn't really do that much. It's like, they don't make money. Podcasters are always broke. And I was getting those reflections back from some of my friends, right? Like I have a friend here locally who has an amazing podcast, and like, I don't know what the metrics would be, but he has like 50,000 downloads a month. So he's like I think that sounds really good. I don't know.
Yeah, that's good.
But makes no money, like zero. And so I'm seeing what my clients were saying about podcasts being reflected back by my close friends. And I was like, oh, well, if I'm not going to make money, I mean, as much as I love the project and I want to support people, I also need to support the business, right? I'm a businessman first and foremost. I need to actually be able to be in business. I need to be able to fund the business. And so I looked at it from that point. So that was a big roadblock, was seeing like my friends in my community saying, or my clients saying, we're not doing this because it doesn't make us money. And then seeing it reflected back at my friends saying, hey, I'm not making money. And the funny part is I have lots of friends in the podcasting space that do quite well. Like I think Melanie Benson was on when we met. I know a lot of Sam Riley. I know a lot of people in the podcasting space that do very well. So it's definitely the 6 inches between my ears, because I know a ton of people that do really well with it. And one of my clients was doing 30 to 50K a week with his podcast in revenue, but it wiped him out because it was doing so well that he couldn't keep up to the business. Yeah. So it's just like, I'm seeing like podcasting always seemed like a great idea. And I still to this day, when I talk about podcasts, I think about it as like, we're kind of like the internet in the 90s. I still think we're that early into the podcast audio world. And it just kind of was like, it's just another thing to add to the plate. That's kind of where it's been for me.
Yeah. Okay. And those are all very reasonable, just, normal things that go through people's heads when they're thinking about investing in this. Now, a filter that I like to use is from one of my favorite books, The Road Less Stupid. I love that. Keith Cunningham wrote it. A lot of people know the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Keith is his rich dad. So it's written by that guy. So The Road Less Stupid, he says, you have to ask yourself, what is the upside? What is the downside? And can we live with the downside? So let's say you launch this show, all right, and you put out a year's worth of content and no one listens and you stop. What is, that would be the downside. Could you live with that? Like, what would be the effects of that? We've invested some money, we've invested some time, but it's not like I had to put up $500,000 for a media company or anything like that. Like an hour a week, maybe for episodes, maybe you delegate some editing and stuff like that. Like maybe $500 a month budget or something. It's like, it can be pretty low cost as far as what you do, like $20 a month to host it in Libsyn. Now I've got a $75 microphone that I've been using. I've used my 2009 MacBook Air that has some of the keys that I can't even read because I type so hard. I'm a powerful typer. So it's not like this huge media expense. It's mainly just time and feeling it out. So then you have to look at the upside and go, okay, if this goes well, what does that look like? How many lives can I impact by impacting other entrepreneurs? How many can we get a hold of and get their dream out there and keep them from quitting? What if you help one outdoor adventure expert not quit on their business and then they go and tear it up and help hundreds or thousands of people? Like, that's the upside. So you weigh those two things out and you kind of just have to get over your fear and the fear of failing. Like, okay, if it bombs, it bombs. We can always rebrand, try different shows. I've rebranded every single one of my shows that I've ever done, usually about the year mark. And I'm like, okay, this wasn't exactly what I expected. Let's change the title, change the topic. And I think that we're dialed in now and people are used to that. Like that's kind of how podcasting works. So look at the upside, look at the downside. Can we live with the downside? And then you weigh it out. Now with like the actual like fear of what if this doesn't succeed? Like that's up to you. And a lot of times when we use the monetization measuring stick, it's because people are launching their show through the wrong reason. They're launching what they think is cool. They launch a really broad topic. It's like the Everything About Everything show, if starring me. And I'm going to go out there and talk about whatever I want to talk about and be Joe Rogan and make millions of dollars from underwear sponsors. And then it doesn't happen and they're pissed. Like, oh, fail. So when I'm, consulting on a launch, we start off with, how is this going to monetize? Like, how is this going to make money? Who do we have to serve to make that happen? And then what content do we have to create to serve those specific people? you go backwards in that formula. My friend Michael Neely is a master at this. He's the one that helped really teach me how to do this. That's like, if you start with how can we earn income by serving the exact right audience, and then create content and create the show around that, it's going to monetize. And then brand sponsorships and stuff like that, that is just icing on the cake. But like being able to get your mastermind full, your workshops, your events, your memberships, consulting, all that stuff, that's all on the table for this. And consulting, business to business consulting is high ticket. And you can do really, really well with that because you're teaching other people how to level up their income, and people are willing to invest in that. So I could easily see you having like a 5K offer where you spend like a VIP business overhaul day. Like, okay, here's how we increase your outdoor adventure business by 20% or whatever you want to put out there. And we're going to do that in a 3-hour block, and we're going to sit down and there's your 5K offer. And like, we have got a template for doing that, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I feel like that's the foundation. It's all around serving the exact right person. And then you can't have any shame or feel like bad about making money off serving the exact right person. I see that from a lot of podcasts out there, like, but I don't have to ask for a sale, or I don't want to have to. I'm like, get over it. Like, you're serving. You are serving, not selling. So any thoughts on what I just said there?
Well, thankfully, I have zero issues in asking for money.
Good.
Yeah, in fact, I've spoken on Michael's stage. At his first ever events, I was one of the speakers. And so I'm familiar. It's funny. I've been in the podcasting world for years and just haven't done it. Yeah. Right. So yeah, this makes total sense. We're right on track.
And your experience, I didn't even know this until you said it. Your experience in affiliate marketing is gold. It is gold. So there's a show called Hustle and Flow Chart. Matt and Joe, they're awesome. They do big downloads. They do over $1 million a year, 100% in affiliate sales for their show. So they just have brands that they're affiliates of that they kind of pimp out on their show. And like, the beauty about affiliate marketing, which obviously you know about, is everyone else does all the customer, satisfaction stuff. Like, they take care of the customers. You just connect the dots, and then they're off and running with that other brand. Like, you don't need a customer service team. You don't have to answer all those emails. You don't have to do refunds, all that stuff. It's like, you connect the dots, boom, and you're happy customers. So like, you can do a ton of just referring and outsourcing for, like, let's say that you've got a really good like business event. You don't have to even have your own business event. Maybe you refer to something like Coach Melanie's doing, like she does her mastermind and things like that. You're an affiliate of her. You have her on the show. You have her do some teaching and go, hey, get $100 off on her next event, blah, blah, blah. And then you get a nice sweet affiliate cut out of that. Like, you could crush it with that stuff. And that's something to where you get the right mix of a little bit of that, a little bit of sponsorship, a little bit of your own stuff. Like, this is cranking bucks, and it's doing very well as a business. And then you're in control of the whole thing. Like, however many interviews you do per week, the content, it doesn't have to be this big behemoth. It doesn't have to be a full-time job, just putting out, podcast episodes. So don't fear that. You could be doing 15-minute episodes, and maybe you batch record, and it's like you do 3 hours a month all at once, and you've got, a month and a half of episodes or whatever you want to do. So you're in control of that. Keep that in mind. Like, you are your own media company, and you can lay the format out there however makes sense to you. How's that sound?
That sounds good. Well, I know it's how you do it, because I've looked into your calendar, so I see how you batch things, right? And yeah, I've always been a fan of time blocking. So, and lifestyle business, like, if I want to knock off in the afternoon here right now and go paddleboarding and and jump in the ocean because it's blistering hot, I've built a business that I can actually do that. And so yeah, this is, again, we're still right on track with this conversation.
Yeah, and it's lifestyle friendly. Like, okay, for example, I'm going to the Lake of the Ozarks for 2 weeks with my family for a vacation, starting on Friday, and I will do 0 interviews, 0 podcast loading, editing, 0 everything. So I just batched a little bit ahead of time. I'm fine. Like, it just took a little extra. Okay, let's squeeze another interview in here, so I'm good for a couple of weeks. Cool. And if you've got affiliate stuff, if you have online services that you sell, all that's still being advertised because you've scheduled all your stuff and it's just out there. and new people come into your world, they binge listen to your show, you're still selling stuff when you're out paddleboarding. Like that's the nice thing. And it's selling through service. Like you're adding genuine value to these people. And again, the thing I really like, I want this to hit home is the fact that you're helping other businesses grow and survive in this space that this is an issue. Like I can tell that's a big part of your why. It's like, there are these experts that are amazing. They can create amazing experiences and you can help them stay afloat and make a few little tweaks that make a difference to where they keep going for the next 10 years and help hundreds of people. And I know like cool things happen. I did an outdoor adventure experience with Cody from Dual Survival.
Cody Lundeen.
Yes, Cody Lundeen. I went out with him out in Arizona for a day and a half with a small group, and it was one of the coolest damn things I've ever done in my life. Watching Cody put out a fire with his bare feet was like I was like, and his feet are like a box because he never wears shoes, you know. He hasn't worn shoes in like 20 years. He's out there stomping it down, and he's like, "This is how you don't die by fire," and and just like teaching us how to like, go number 2 in the woods and not get bit by scorpions and stuff like that. I'm like, this is amazing. How to get water. Like, so I've lived through one of those really amazing experiences. And I know that you are helping other people facilitate that. So
yeah, when I look at that and I'm like, Cody's a great example. He's gotten really good visibility. We share the same teacher, the gentleman I was mentioning in the intro form sent me, Morris Kohansky, right? He was both of our teachers.
Wow.
He wrote a book, but he ended up spending most of his life, his career kind of teaching and, selling crafts and things like that to pay for his lifestyle because teaching didn't do it. And he, I don't want to see other professionals do that because I'm seeing that happen right now, especially over the past 18 months and the, kind of the shift in the world. It's seeing, I started the Outdoor Adventure Summit last year as a way to help my outdoor friends that have actually already started businesses, that have like lead magnets, things like that, to actually bring them into or get them more exposure with what was happening. And it went really, really well. And I was like, okay, well, I can help my friends. And that was really the catalyst that led me to this point now. I was like, I can turn this from like running, 3, 4, 5, 6 survival trainings a year as like a side project a little passion project I love into, well, I can help my friends that are also doing that want to do it all the time, fill their pipelines, have them create amazing businesses. They just need some, different strategies than what they're doing right now.
And affiliate marketing fits right in with that. Yeah. You get a little, whatever kickback for promoting their event, their school, their experience. You could do that and never sell a thing and do well. That and a little bit of sponsorship. I mean, that seems to me to be low hanging fruit, easy stuff. And like, it seems very doable. And I shoot it straight. Like if somebody tells me a terrible idea with their show, I'm like, that will never work in my opinion. Like this seems like, okay, it makes sense to do this. Now, let's just talk about some like the initial steps of what this would look like if you decide to launch a podcast. Because a lot of people are like, okay, now what's my first step? What the heck do I do? I like to start obviously thinking about, like I said, how do we monetize by serving the right person? What are the needs of that right person? And how do we create content around that? So we've already talked about that a little bit. The next step I actually go is the name. I'm like, all right, when you name a podcast, you want it to be super obvious what you're talking about. Example, this show, let's talk about your podcast. It's not like the Everything Cool show or like, like you get these people get real like artsy and kind of cheeky with their podcast name. That doesn't help us in SEO. That helps 0 people find their show. My other rule with the image, I don't have my face on any of my images. Some people like it's a big thing of their face and then their title is like this little italic script that nobody can read. And I'm like, if your face is on a billboard in New York City, would anybody know who the hell you are? If not, don't put your face on your image because on a phone, it's this big and you want people to see those words and what it is. So that's just my personal opinion. Now, name wise, you want it to be very obvious what you're talking about. And you want it to be search engine optimized because the number one way we get earbuds and eyeballs on your show is the SEO is the title. Then it goes to the description. Then it goes to the episode title. So those are the 3 areas that we want keywords that if the ideal listener was to go into Apple Podcast and type in some key search words, what would those be to find your show? All right. So your brand is Outdoor Adventure School. I think that's a perfect name. I think that is a perfect name for this show. You could even add in Outdoor Adventure Business School, but that may pigeonhole you a little bit. I like Outdoor Adventure School because you can bring in outdoor adventure experts on. You talk about what they're doing, tips on what their experience level is, and then talk a little business also. I feel like, outdoor and adventure are very searchable. And then in the description, you hit some of those other keywords where you mentioned business, you talk marketing, but then also outdoor experiences, whatever the key SEO words are. And you're in this genre anyway. Like you know this better than I am. So that's I would honestly go with Outdoor Adventure School. Like I think it's already the website. It's easy to remember. It's SEO friendly.
And outdoor adventure has kind of been the theme of this because I wanted to create something that was a hub for everything else, right? So the Outdoor Adventure School, Outdoor Adventure Summit. I had thought about just calling it the Outdoor Adventure Podcast instead of, and just leaving off the school part from the podcast. So maybe it's definitely worth I'll do my keywords research to make sure. But
yeah, either of those I'm totally cool with. That would get my stamp of approval. Outdoor Adventure Podcast, Outdoor Adventure School Podcast. Both of those sound like I know what that is. I have at least an idea what that is. It's not like the Rivers and Streams podcast. Like I'm like, I don't know what that is. I'm not sure. It's creative, it's different, but if they go, what the hell is this? Then that's not a good start. Now, where you can get creative is your episode titles. That's where you can get a little bit more niche down, but still look for SEO optimized stuff. Like for Podcasting Business School, a big hot topic that I'm trying to SEO well is Clubhouse. People are really going nuts on Clubhouse in the podcasting space. So I'm gonna start putting the word Clubhouse in the show description and in some episode titles just to kind of get that SEO going. And now that I'm on YouTube, that's going to show up in the titles there as well. So you got to be thinking if there's a big outdoor event or something happening, like if you can toss that in a title, how to optimize your experience at blah, blah, blah event or anything like that. It's great content and it's going to get more eyeballs on you. So the naming is important. So I feel like we can kind of check that box. Then the next thing that we look at is okay, when you launch, I have people launch with 4 episodes. All right. We don't want to launch with 1 because what if they don't like the 1? I want to give them a little sampler platter of 4 episodes. And I don't care how long they are. They can be 15 minutes. They can be an hour each. They can be short little snippets. You could do 1 interview with 1 person and break it up into 4 15-minute segments. And those are 4 shows. Okay. So if you're like, I'm going to run out of people to talk to, I'm running out of time, do 1 hour interview and make it 2 30-minute episodes or 3 20-minute episodes, whatever. That's fine. I want the initial episode to be just the about me, about the show. It's 7 to 10 minutes long. For people that I onboard, a lot of times I'll interview them. So it's not weird. This is where I talk about myself and brag. It's I kind of pull those things out. So you could have somebody that's a trusted person, a friend in the space, interview you and kind of help introduce your story, or somebody like me, I'd be glad to do that. So then that's out there. Then you go into interviews. So you give them a sampler platter of interviews or a solo episode and 2 interviews, or you just want to let them know, maybe a little panel, but it's a sampler platter so that they go to your show. That way, when you go to the big, I've launched, I'm promoting this. Let's tell everybody I know. They've got a little something that they can go, okay, I really like that one. I don't like that one as much. They'll vote with their downloads, and you can look at that and go, okay, the interviews are crushing it. The solo episodes, not so much, or whatever. The shorter content doing really well. The longer stuff, not so much. And then we can start tailor making our content based off of that feedback. And then, so what I would plan on is 4 episodes. Then I'd want you to have 2 more. I love people to be 2 weeks of content ahead in case you decide to go off on vacation or you get hurt or sick or business gets really busy. That way we don't miss a week of content because consistency is very important. So we're looking at like a 6-episode launch, 4 go out immediately, and then you're good for 2 weeks. And then we just record like an episode a week, or if you want to batch, you record, 1 batch per month, and you're putting it out there, and you've got a show. And then we just, leverage social media and things like that. But like just getting in the flow of here's when I record, here's my goal of the interview, here's my interview format. And you just get in this rhythm of recording. Like what we're doing now, this is so easy. Like for me, it's just having conversations. And then the aha button goes off and you're like, I get to have the most interesting conversations with people I'm really interested in talking to as often as I want. And that's kind of my job. That's freaking cool. So it goes from how am I going to pull this off? How am I going to find time to do this to I want to do this all the time. And that's why I'm a full-time podcaster with 3 shows. So how is that launch situation hitting you? Any questions about that?
Yeah. So you would say, so if we're launching with like 6 episodes, then what you're saying is they shouldn't all necessarily be the same length, right? We should be testing different lengths to find out what's working best, what people are liking going forward. I was worried about, because I believe too, consistency is so critical in marketing, right? Sending emails the same time every day, same days of the week, depending on when you're doing it, right? Having a newsletter goes out on the same day, all that kind of stuff, consistent branding. But I also talk a lot of in the affiliate side of the business that you got to test things, right, and see what's working and what's not. So I didn't really think about applying that to episode length and different style of content. I just this idea in my head: if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do an interview and I'm going to do a monologue, and an interview and monologue, and so I just do that kind of stuff. But this would very clearly start to delineate what makes sense and what doesn't, what people are liking and what they're not.
Yeah. So like, let's look at your first 4 episodes now that you kind of laid out the interview monologue. So first episode is your story, the story of the show, the goals of the show. Short. Usually that's like intro. Some people even call that episode 0. They don't even give it a number. It's not even number 1 yet. It's just 0. But that would still count as one of our 4. Then I would do an interview that, like, all right, this person, they're good. I know them well. We have a good vibe. It's going to be good content. Then you do your monologue for episode 3. And then another interview for episode 4. That's what I would start with. And then I love the back and forth monologue interview. That's what I do for my my show, Podcasting Business School. And it works really, really well because I've got things to say. Now, those are usually shorter. If I do a solo episode, it's usually 15 to 25 minutes. My interviews are 30 to 45 minutes, just because I'm curious. That's how we are. I ask a lot of questions of other people. And I wouldn't really stress out about they all have to be 27 minutes or whatever. For me, interviews just tend to go a little bit longer just because there's a conversation involved. And when it's just me, I just blast. I'm like bullet point. Here's step number 1. Here's step number 2, blah, blah, blah. So don't get too hung up on that. And again, you'll see what your people want. And like an interesting thing, like how we're doing this kind of coaching style or consulting style episode, my audience loves these. And it's awesome because it's easy content. Like it's just me doing what I do. I coach, I consult, I help, I give ideas. So you could do stuff like this where you're just bringing people on to ask you questions even. Like that's could be an episode. It could be even an audience panel Q&A, or maybe you have 3 outdoor adventure professionals and you kind of just bounce ideas around. There's all sorts of different formats that we could test out, but that's something that popped up that I never thought of, is like bringing, like I've done live coaching sessions for years now, and they're always my most downloaded episodes because that guest represents my ideal listener. They're coming out of the audience and they're asking the questions that everyone else has that wants to ask. So it makes sense. It's like, wow, this really does resonate. And that's why they're hitting that download button for those more than others. So is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So once you have those episodes recorded, so 6 total, we got 4 ready to go live, 2 in the bank. We put you up on Apple Podcasts. All right. And you want to get your show submitted to Apple Podcasts. And the key mistake that people are making right now, especially, I just had one of my buddies do this. I was like, oh, you should have talked to me. He started making the announcement, I'm going to be live on June 5th. And he's making that announcement and promoting on social media for like a month ahead of time. But he thought you just submit to Apple Podcasts and then all of a sudden it's live on June 5th. No, Like, especially right now, it's taking some people 2 weeks. Like normally 2 to 3 days is a good buffer. But I'm like, okay, 2 weeks before you want to be live and announcing and everything, we hit submit on Apple Podcasts. That way we know it. We see it's up there. It's up there. You may have some downloads. You're not really missing out on anything special with like, and then we get our campaign together of like, all right, we're going to send these emails. I'm recruiting these people that owe me favors to all hit subscribe on that day. Like all these like algorithm boosting things. We've got some social media ready to go. And then we, maybe you go live with some of your guests or whatever, and you do like the week promo of launch week, but you need to hit that Apple. The least amount of time I give yourself is 1 week. If you have 7 days, submit it to Apple Podcast, and then you see it's there. Everything looks good. You want to go on Spotify. You want to go on Audible. You want to go on Stitcher, all the different podcast players, and look at it and go, okay, does the image show up? Is my description correct? Because sometimes they screw it up. I got a hold of a client that their Apple Podcast feed was like, it looked like they hadn't released an episode in 3 years because they did their first few episodes as a season and that pinned it at the top. And then everything else was going to the bottom of the feed. And I'm like, it looks like you haven't done an episode in years, but I know you're releasing weekly content. What the hell's going on? And they had never gone to Apple and just like looked through it. Like they always listen on Spotify. I'm like, what are you doing? So you're going to look at all the players, make sure your episodes are showing up. The episode numbers look correct, all that stuff. And then we go into promo zone. And it does help. Like if we get a concentrated batch of people hitting subscribe all at once, leaving some ratings and reviews, all the things that we tell people to do, that helps boost us in the search algorithm. That'll give us some love on the podcast players as we launch, and that helps. And then from there, it's just sticking to that weekly groove. Like we always stay a couple weeks ahead. We batch when we batch, and we have great conversations, and we learn more about our audience. So that's kind of where I would see this going. How does that hit you so far?
Makes sense. Question is, so if you're running 3 podcasts, for example, right? Like you said, you've got the 3 shows. Well, I can see them behind you. And so if we're running 3 podcasts, that's like that probably takes up, I'm imagining, quite a bit of time to kind of get and build all this content in the backlog, because I'm sure that this will release it a certain way. Every show will have a different framework or a different, not framework, but
there's different system around it. Yeah.
So per podcast, like per show, if you're doing like a weekly thing, if I remember correctly, you were saying like that could be as little as an hour, just the recording time, basically, especially if I'm turning over a lot of that piece to somebody who's doing the work, right?
Yep.
Okay. So time investment kind of gets mashed pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because there's no, if I'm not doing all the work, then there's not a huge investment other than the time I get to have conversations. Okay.
Yeah. Especially if you're going to offload and delegate editing and production and social media stuff. All you're going to have to do is show up and create content. Mm-hmm. And I have all sorts of podcasting friends that do that. They show up, they do what we're doing here. They send it off to their VA or whoever's taking care of them. They chop it up, the videos, the social media stuff, the assets, and the editing, show notes, all that stuff is done for them. So that's, and even if you do it yourself, it's not that much time. Like it depends how picky you get on the editing. If you're going to comb through it and take out all the ums and the lip smacks and all that stuff, it's going to take you a long time. I talked to somebody the other week. They said they spend 7 hours editing each 30-minute episode. I'm like, this is insane. You are crazy. I'll spend like 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, their dog ran in and attacked him. I'll take that out. Otherwise, like, we're good. But that's if you're doing like a professional, like my friend Tom Singer hosts a show for the National Speaker Association. That needs to be cleaner because it's about speaking, But if it's about outdoor adventure or losing weight or, business stuff, as long as like the fire alarm doesn't go off or something like that, like I'm cool. Let's rock. So that's something that like, time-wise, you can make this very efficient. There will be time getting that initial flow going, getting your rhythm. Okay, here's how I book guests. Here's how I'm scheduling them. Here's when I'm recording. Here's what works with my schedule. Here's how much time it takes me to do follow-up or whatever. But once you get that, you're in the zone, man. That's why I can do 3 shows and do this full time and like it's still, I only work 4 days a week. You know, I work Monday through Thursday, and I'm doing this all the time. So something to keep in mind. There is hope in efficiency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I feel pretty good about this, Brady. Like, I feel like this is something that you could serve a unique audience. I've already got a couple of shows that have that are in the outdoor space that I would love to connect you with. My friend Rob Roy's got a great podcast that he does. He's an active duty Air Force pilot, but he's just he really has amazing outdoor skills and things like that. Like, I want to connect you to a guy like that. So I mean, I think what would hold you back? Like, is there anything that's still like, I need to have this question answered before I'm ready to just say, F it, let's do this?
I guess one thing that's coming up is from a technology standpoint, there's so many tools, right?
Yeah.
You talk about Libsyn. There's like I use, for example, for my business, I use it for courses and things like that. I use Kajabi, which has a podcast platform. So there's all these different places to have information. And I'm just, in my mind, I'm like, normally when somebody asks about technology, I'm like, well, just pick one and just go. But I imagine there's different, in this case, because of SEO, because of a number of different things. There's probably some that are better than others.
Yeah.
And like, I'm a marketer, right? So when I look at marketing, I'm like, I look at Libsyn and things like that, and I'm like, well, it doesn't seem to be geared for marketing, right? And I was looking at podcasting platforms built for marketers, by marketers. Yeah. And I'm like, that's also, I know as a marketer, that's people marketing. So I'm like, does it actually make sense? Does it work? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've asked Michael this question previously, and he was like, well, just use Libsyn and just figure it out from there. But technology is one of the things that's popping up in my head, just because I am more geared that way to think about the technical aspect, even though I'm not very tech savvy. Right. So I've run tech companies, but I could barely put together an email sequence or build a funnel, right? It's just not my forte. The people thing is more me.
Yeah.
And so technology comes up. The time thing has been quashed. Investment doesn't matter. It's like, that just has to pay for itself very quickly. Connections seems like they can be put together pretty rapidly. And I have a lot of friends in the outdoor industry that I can interview. I probably have a year of content without even having to barely ask, including I could repurpose a lot of stuff because I have the Outdoor Adventure Summit and I have all the recordings of the speakers from those events. Those could be repurposed.
Hell yes.
And then of course, like, I wanted to do a series. Actually, this is one. So like, I'm clear on what I want to do as far as like helping outdoor professionals. But I imagine that just by the brand alone, Outdoor Adventure, it's going to attract people that are just lovers of the outdoors. And so does it open up the door to like having, or does it make sense to do what we talked about, where it's like the monologue and the interview, where we go beyond that and have specific seasons and things like that? Because like, that's where like I just get caught up sometimes in the details rather than just like too much thinking.
Yeah. Okay. Let's unpack some of this. So first off, tech-wise, you can never optimize if you never start. Boom. Quote that. So like Michael said, I would go Libsyn, Zoom, microphone, go. Like it could be that simple. Now I just started using StreamYard. I'm 6 years into the game, and this is like $25 a month. And this was super easy with like the whole, like, you see all the bells and whistles, and it's really good audio. This was simple to set up. I'm a meathead, and this was easy. So that gives us hope. $25 a month. So I've upgraded from Zoom to this, but it took me 6 years and 600 podcast episodes. But I could, this is something that I would recommend. If you want to go one leg up than Zoom, I would do StreamYard. Because this way I can go live into YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and that produces content automatically with no editing. And that's awesome. Okay. So that's, again, we start and then we optimize from there. And the Libsyn is excellent. You can always, if you have Kajabi skills, I would build like a podcast feature page, or you can run a blog through that so the episodes are posted and you just have your own URL. And I use Kajabi also. And that's where like I flow everything through my Kajabi website for my podcast, not like the Libsyn podcast player thing. Like, it's not that. Like, I don't think I've ever even clicked on it. So to be honest, but Libsyn's metrics awesome. The information they give you, it's a legit platform. They're not going anywhere. Like there's no like scammy weird stuff. They are great with your listeners' private information. Some platforms like do like the like the cookies and the connections, and then people can follow them around just because they listen to their show and stuff. And it's like Libsyn doesn't play that game. The only thing I would recommend is not using Anchor, because they do a lot of like my friend Allison, her show it showed up on Anchor. Someone else stole all of her episodes and put weird like commercials in it and like just pirated the whole brand and put it on Anchor, because they don't check for any of that stuff. So I wouldn't use Anchor. So that would be my only recommendation to not use. Okay. So what was the second part of the question that we got into? I dove deep on the first part. You were talking about bringing other people in the brand.
Around like having like season stuff, right? Where
yes.
it's like,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So personally, I wouldn't recommend actual seasons of the show, like where you go, this is season 1 and then there's a break. I want you to always have content out like at least once a week. You can call the first 8 episodes season 1 and then the next 8 episodes season 2. And I would not set up season settings on your host, because like I mentioned before, people screw that up all the time and it gets weird when it converts over. But you can call it like the first episode, and then you can be like season 1, episode 1. I would keep a tally though going of like, if you end season 1 at episode 8, I would say, and the next season starts season 2, episode 9. I wouldn't say season 2, episode 1, because then it could be kind of weird also, because you want to think if you're on someone else's show or on somebody else's stage, you want to keep it simple and go to episode 387 of my show, not go to season 2, season 14, episode 3, or like, then it's like, well, I don't know what he said. He said a bunch of numbers. So like, you got to think about like ease of consumption for the ideal listener, and you being able to spread that knowledge. But I totally like, you can do deep dives with those seasonal formats and go, all right, we're talking business for season 1. We're talking outdoor experiences for season 2. Or if you have certain like brand partners you really want to talk about, or event, or, outdoor experts you want to feature, certain topics, summer excursions, winter excursions, Europe, different continents. That's like, it's all game, fair game, bro. Like you can have fun with it. That's where you get creative and you get to just like explore all these topics. Like I am nerding out on Clubhouse. I'm nerding out on YouTube right now. So I'm putting out a ton of content about that, because that's what I'm really excited about. Whatever I'm just really jazzed about, I dive deep, because those produce great episodes because I'm curious and I've got all these questions. And I know if I have all these questions, my audience probably does too, because I kind of represent my avatar. So feel free to, that's where you can kind of bring the artistic element into your show, is like, all right, I can do whatever I want with this. I'm the media company here, and I can experiment and explore and see what my audience likes, see what I get value out of too. You have to take that into account. Like, am I getting value out of this? Did I walk away and go, oh, that was an awesome conversation, I got better, or I helped someone else get better? That's what it's all about, man. So if it's not fun, if it becomes like oh my God, I got to interview Brady today. That's when we close the show. Like that's like every time I get to turn this mic on, I'm fired up because I'm helping people. I'm having awesome conversations. I'm earning income a lot of the time. Like, it's just like, it's awesome. So I hope that gives you some confidence. And, my whole goal with doing this, this is a great example. I'm doing a series on this show for people specifically wanting to launch. I featured pretty much any podcaster before, but now it's like, let's get into launch mode and do a series on that, because I have so many people asking me questions about this. I want to create a resource specifically for them. So I'm nerding out on podcast launching for as long as I want to, because this is my damn show. So anyway, that's just kind of one example. So my goal with this interview was, hopefully at this point now, you at least just have a little bit more confidence that you could pull this off. Do you feel like we achieved that here today, Brady?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good, my friend. All right.
Relief.
Yes. Because if you go, I'm like, oh man, That's fail, epic fail. All right, guys that are watching live, or if you're watching the replay on YouTube or Facebook, I want you to check out what Brady has to offer, outdooradventureschool.com. Keep an eye out. I'll be promoting it as big as anybody when he launches his podcast that may or may not be called Outdoor Adventure Podcast or Outdoor Adventure School. Maybe you could vote in the comments. I don't know, or get a hold of him. But I'm really excited about this, Brady. And where do you mainly hang out on social? Let's shout that out a little bit. And where can people find you?
Primarily Instagram. Instagram's my main feed, so you can find me at Brady Patterson. So just my name. I got to rebrand. Everything's coming. It's always been under my personal name, and I'm just making the shift now.
Nice. Now that is one thing I did search. The Outdoor Adventure Podcast. I remember I had a mental note about this. I think there are like 3 other shows that have that similar title. So it could that's something to be aware of. Like, just search your titles in Apple Podcasts, especially, and see what pops up. I think there was at least one, but then if they haven't released an episode since 2015, we're good. If they release every week, let's see how we could, put another word in there that may fit. So something to think about as we conclude here today. Cool, my man. And I'm in your corner. However I can add some value, you know how to get a hold of me. You know where I hang out on the social medias. But I appreciate just being open and being open to explore this idea. I'll give you my full vote of confidence. I think that you've got the expertise, you've got the connections. Like you said, you've got a year of content ready to go, pretty much. I hope that you do this. And again, I appreciate you spending some time with us here today.
Well, thanks for having me. Really appreciate being here.
All right, Pod Pals. If you're watching on the video, on the bottom, it says, want to come on the show? Email me, podcastingbusinessschool@gmail.com, or you can kick me a DM on Instagram. If you're thinking about launching a show, I would love to bring you on and talk about your podcast launch. And with that, I will leave it wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you next time, Pod Pals.